We'll be starting about 6:05. Yep, got it. Thank you. Yes. Danielle Kraus?
Yes. Here.
She's trying. Again?
Able to hear me?
She
Hello? Hello?
All right. We'll go through and we'll try again in a second here. Steve Carreau? Everett Nelson? Steve Roundtree?
Here.
Nathan Smallwood?
Sure.
I can't hear. I'm not able to hear you either, Nathan.
How about now?
Barb
Can you hear me?
Hart, Andrew Dewart?
Here.
Skupich?
Here.
And Trustee Corvalon just joined us online. Can
Yes.
you? Can't hear her either. All right.
I wonder if it's a Kate issue because I can hear all of you that are online. Must be Kate.
Danielle
If
just
somebody
told
wants to
me
text
that
her,
she can
maybe.
hear Nathan and everyone. We just can't in here.
I hear everybody. I hear Kate and everybody. Yes.
We can't.
They can hear us. We can't hear them.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, while we work that out, are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? No. Okay, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Kate, can you call the roll?
Danielle Kraus, if you just want to raise your hand.
Yes.
Danielle, do you want to try?
Got a
I got a thumbs up. Can you try saying yes again so we can see if we fixed it?
Yes. 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 Yes.
She's talking about one. Steve Crow? Yes.
Hello, hello.
The green.
Yeah, it's green now.
Is it? I don't hear it on the speaker either.
Yeah, I don't hear much, but
I think there's just
I
a
don't-
sound thing.
I wonder if Amen.
whoop whoop.
Test. Nothing.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna have somebody come and help us with the speakers and this because I think that is maybe.
It's all
Playing
related
over.
somehow. Yeah, it's not. It's not on.
Pattern?
If they're okay with raising their hand to finish this vote, then maybe well, let's see what's next.
I mean, we could approve the consent agenda.
Yeah, we can finish with this vote and then it's the signatory where it's mostly me talking, so they're hearing us. So that was the biggest challenge. At least they can hear us
Good
and they
question.
can hear each other.
So are the warrants part of the consent agenda?
Yeah.
A question before we pass that. I know the No-Go Gillbillies as a musical act. Did they also work on our public art?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, they're Netter Days.
Okay.
They filmed at Netter Days.
Oh, all right, got it. Thanks.
So do we want to visually get hands up for?
Danielle gave us a hands up
Okay.
and Steve Carot is the next person.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Everett Nelson, Steve Roundtree, Nathan Smallwood, can you put your hand up to let us know? Okay, great, thank you. Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Scott Papich,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon? Oh, yeah, nope, I'm sorry. All right, thank you all.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Okay. Gonna ask if there's any public comment on non-agenda items?
There's no public on the
No public?
online.
No internet.
Here's the discussion about coming in person.
There's no public online and there's one member of the public in person. Did you have any public comment on non-agenda items, sir? Did you have any comments on non-agenda items? You could right now bring up what you had brought up to me before the meeting started if you wanted to. This would be a time. Mhm.
Oh, there we
Yep.
go. We're getting some sound, yeah. A little more volume, yeah.
Nathan or Danielle, can you let us know if it's too loud?
And Nathan, can you?
Yes, can anyone hear me?
Yes. All
Thank
fixed.
you. Yay.
Step one.
Thank you. All right. And if you can speak into the speaker so everybody can hear you.
And sir, if you could
Okay.
say your name again, just for the.
Yeah, Jim Navratil. I live up in Big Springs, 86 Stowe Trail. And I just have a concern about the bridge, the second bridge. If there's any influence you have with the Board of Trustees to get that moved up and get it built before we have a really emergency of some type. Either I'm having a heart attack and the ambulance can't get to me, or there's a fire up there, so.
So your concern is,
Hi, this is Trustee Corvalon, and I just wanted to comment.
go ahead, Tanya.
Last I heard, we had applied for a big grant, and we made the finalists of it. I don't know if it's a DOLA grant or I think it's a different one. So that's the last I heard. We would have to put a match that we do have the funds to do that. So fingers crossed that we get the grant, and then if that happens, then it's about negotiating where we put it. We have about 3 locations, and so we have to narrow it down. But so, I mean, there is progress, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, even if we got the money tomorrow, because it's got to get built. But we did make the finals.
I could give an update on that if you'd like.
Yeah.
We did not get that grant, but it is still a priority for the town to make sure that happens in the
Oh.
near future. So we're working
I
on
didn't
that.
know that.
We
I
just
didn't
found
know
out. It was like yesterday. So
Ugh. Sorry.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just still trying to have a get online here. So if you guys could give me 1 minute. Kate, if you want to
The act.
Yeah, sorry, I should have painted this.
Yep. If you,
Okay. So the first action item is the NDDA banking signatory changes, given we had the change in board leadership. So Kate, do you want to
yep.
talk that?
So this document you all are this process you all are familiar with. Every year at this time, I need to read this into the minutes so that I can take it to the banks to make all the signing changes on our accounts, given the change in board leadership. So at the NDDA Board's July 2024 meeting, the following members were elected to leadership positions as follows. The chair is now Andrew Dewart, the vice chair is now Barbara Hart, and the treasurer is Steve Roundtree. Given the leadership change, Ron Mitchell must be removed from all accounts listed below and Barb Hart added to the following accounts. Sunflower accounts ending in 8896 and 9792, and citywide bank accounts ending in 662 and 9789. This item is necessary, as well as the meeting minutes for our banks to make the necessary changes. The question before the board tonight is, does the board approve of the changes to the signatory documents at Citywide and Sunflower Bank to reflect the 2024-2025 board leadership? And I also have a possible motion if that is approved on the document for you all.
I move to approve the changes to the signatory documents.
Drew is second.
Second.
Okay, can you call the roll?
Danielle Kraus,
Get the thumb.
now Danielle, we can hear you. Thank you for doing that. Steve Carreau,
Yes.
Everett Nelson,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Nathan Smallwood,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Scott Papich.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay, the next item is the NDDA 2025 budget. So Kate, do you want to introduce the 2025 budget?
So I was thinking, I would set the table for everybody and Steve can jump in like we did last month. And, the most of the focus tonight is the project discussion. So this meeting is our second meeting in our process, and feedback is thought more on the capital improvement projects tab this evening to frame our future discussions and what we're going to be doing this year. The budget, or next year, the budget is also an item with our final draft for request for approval in September. The focus of this meeting is to show administrative costs and income projections, with much of the focus on projects for 2025. All projects except for wayfinding, that's you'll see when I go through the projects. Public art may have a carryover, but I'll go through that. Wayfinding and public art are scheduled to wrap up at the budgeted phase 2024. We generally begin by zeroing out items at the beginning of the budget year. Capital projects funded in conjunction with town and other requested matching funds must be carried over to meet the commitment. All administrative costs and income projections have remained relatively flat. The only, and it's going to get into my question for the board, I put a lot of attachments in there this evening, and that was mostly for ease of reference so that we can pull from where if there's something that struck anybody about anything. So you have the last budget prep presentation, which summarized information that we received from DCI and from our work with Trustee Sterling. You have the final report from DCI. You have our draft budget document, and you have the 2023 profit and loss, so you can see how spending last year compared to this year as well. You have the 2024 committed versus uncommitted, which is giving us update on your current capital improvement projects. And that capital improvement tab is where that was the template that I used to draft this committed versus uncommitted. So there's some continuity in there for you as you're reviewing that. So tonight during our discussion, and really this is what we're doing this meeting, is does the board wish to include anything from the DCI management report? What projects should we continue to fund? Should an update to our plan be funded this year or next? That's with the work with Cheney Bostic. And should the performance space be funded in 2025? And another question for you is, should the future administrative position that was discussed during my review, should that be funded as a DDA secretary since we already have a cost center set up for there? And it is something as part of your bylaws, and a lot of that work is administrative assistant work and things that could be helpful with secretary role. So I just wanted to talk about that since we generally keep everything the same for our admin, but that would be something, or our administrative costs, but that would be an area where we would change there and how much you would want to allocate it. So, so yeah, that's where we are. I thought maybe it would be helpful. Do you want to start with admin or do you want to start with project updates? What makes the most sense to Steve, Andrew, Barb, all of you?
I think the admin's relatively easy.
Yeah.
And we could probably clear that out of the way
Okay.
and then get into project updates and then budget goals.
Okay, okay.
So Barb and I had a chance to sit down with Kate and go over kind of goals and review. And one of the things that we think that came out of that meeting and we suggested was that in order to allow Kate to focus on more of the project management, big picture tasks, that it would be helpful for her to have a secretary slash, bookkeeper data entry position, a part-time position. So we think we'd like to bring before, I guess you gotta create even a motion for this, but there would be to carve out some in the budget to help. Because originally, a year and a half ago, when we voted as a board to take the bookkeeping and data entry out of Kate's hands. But I think also over the last year and a half, 2 years, it's become clear. I mean, there is a lot of just administrative note taking and prep and creating things that I think if Kate was able to have some more bandwidth to kind of do a bigger picture project management, that it would be more beneficial to the board as a whole. So I think, this isn't necessarily a motion just yet, but the motion would be something like, does the board approve creating and budgeting for a part-time administrative assistant slash secretary slash bookkeeper? And we talked with Kate about creating the request for, or the job description, the job posting, since, that we would obviously, leadership would work with Kate to dial that in, but I think that's the admin part of this discussion. So with that, just wanted to go around the room and get feedback from everyone here. Can I start with Scott? I think, Kate, do you want to chime in about that?
So right now, so for the last couple of weeks, I've been just evaluating everything I was doing. And as I'm setting up systems, as we're all working together, I've been kind of thinking about where that person would clue in so that I didn't just draft an RFP and then we figured it out. We knew what we were going to do, and then this is how it's going to roll out. I do think what we had started talking about was 5 hours a week was where we're looking at, and that seems to be really good. Like that would take a lot of different communication and things off of my plate to focus on the other project management tasks and just other meetings, other things that my time can go towards. So the cost, I don't know what we were thinking about, but I would think that we would stay in our typical hiring range, which is typically between $20 and $25 an hour is typically what we've done. But that's another piece that we haven't quite landed on yet because I haven't given them the full draft of what I'm thinking yet and what that would be. But I would imagine that's typically what our hiring rate is for this organization. Did I answer all your questions there? Okay.
Steve?
Yes, I can see the importance of this, and having been a chair years back and seeing how much the ED was doing, I think that it's a good plan and will help the DDA move forward. And the number of hours per week seems pretty reasonable. And that dollar range also sounds reasonable. So I'm on board with it.
Yeah, I think, you know, the hourly hour allocation is on target. I think, you know, as far as pay range, I honestly, you know, I think it's going to be more than 20. I don't think 20 is a, you know, realistic starting number to talk about, but I mean, for someone that's potentially being asked to do, you know, kind of data entry and bill pay, but we can, you know, circle back on that. But I think hourly, we're not far off, but maybe just as an average with, you know, 25-ish being the mid-range of that. And then, yeah, because given that it's less hours, you know, appealing.
And
Yeah.
we want to make it appealing to somebody to work a few hours a week, helping us out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Steve Roundtree?
I think I agree kind of with the concept of this. I guess my one question on it would be if it's 5 hours a week, if it's efficient to have like does it make more sense for like your role to add 5 hours a week and take care of things that if it's a lack of time to get things done, my concern would be someone working 5 hours a week, the amount of interaction required to get things done and to get someone trained. I feel like there's maybe just a lot of room for like additional communication and chances for like things to fall through the cracks when if we're not feeling like it's like a full time or like really like a lot. You know, but I agree that the time needs to be dedicated to it. I guess I would like, as we're talking through this, just raise the question of is two people versus one person who's taking care of stuff? Because I've just experienced where like when someone has a really limited role, that there can be a lot of time spent just trying to like keep that person in the loop. So just I think just some perspective, but I totally support that if we have more stuff that needs to happen to like make it so that we're functioning, 5 extra hours a week, if that means that we can like accomplish more of our goals, then that's money well spent.
Barb?
Kate, what is your average number of hours per week right now?
It's about 27, 28.
So if you go up by 5 hours a week, you are talking about a full-time employee that has to be benefited. And I think that is one of the things that we have been talking about, is that if you take that step up, you have to really take the step up to the next level.
Mhm.
When I came on to the DDA, it was right as Hope was transitioning out. They did have an executive director and a secretary for when your husband was the director, way back when. And it seemed like it made a really big difference for them. So I think there's a lot to think about there with time and whether or not you want to have a full-time employee that you are also providing benefits for. So that was one of the big questions that came up for me. I'd love to have Kate work more hours, but I'm also wondering like how that would offset us and whether, 5 to 8 hours a week of a different person would be a better balance. And I have a lot of part-time staff that do wonderful, amazing things in 5 to 8 hours a week. So that's my thought.
Thanks, Barb. Everett?
Well, I think that finding somebody who's going to be competent, who's going to work for 5 hours a week at $125 a week is going to be difficult. Because I could tell you that 5 hours a week for $125 isn't really worth it. If I was that person, I would question. I'd be like, well, that's, now I'm kind of committed to this 5-hour block for $125 a week. I mean, is there any way we can, I don't know, give them more job duties, give them more hours? I don't know. I think that for 5 hours, I don't know. If that's only $125 a week, I mean, just my thought. I don't know.
Yeah. The members online, can we go with Danielle?
Hi, thank you.
I think this is a good idea. I hear the points of 5 hours a week. It does seem like that might not be efficient. However, with a lot of people who work remotely and have a variety of different jobs and piece things together, I think we could find somebody more readily than we think to fit in. And I think it would be worth sending a call out and finding that. I appreciate Barb's point that somebody could get quite a bit done and be an awesome part of a team that would alleviate some of the thinking of the chores that this job would um, be filling. And support for Kate if we can't manage her full time. And I think that would be a huge adjustment. I think this is a wonderful solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. Tanya?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. One, I think we should budget for more hours, up to 20 in our budget this year for this position. I think we should bring this to the BOT to see perhaps is an overlap. I noticed with the DCI, it'll go into our next conversation. There were some aspects of ideas that kind of overlapped into NDDA territory, and maybe this new person could take on some of those responsibilities, either being with the web design, the website, small business gatherings, and help centers, event management for things within the NDDA district. I feel like there is a lot of potential for another person to actually really put out some wings and really help take off the NDDA a little bit. And so I'm all for this position. You could start it out with just somebody to help with the books at 5 to 8 hours a week. But I think when we're hiring, if possible, it'd be interesting to see maybe if this position could actually grow. Does that make sense to anybody?
So Tanya,
I feel like,
oh,
yeah.
I am on the exact same page with you. Those are some of the things that I was thinking about and putting on the list is helping with business outreach and that. And also this person can help me by taking some of that off my plate. I can go after larger grant funding streams like the Main Streets programs and things like this
Right.
that John and I have started talking about. And yes, there's absolutely ways to that this benefits the BOT and the DDA in a great way
Yeah.
together. So there's a lot of potential here. So I
I
agree.
think so. So I think in our budget conversation, we should budget up to 20, 30 hours a week. Because as we know from our budget conversations, we don't have to spend it, right? But if we don't put it in the budget, we can't allocate it quickly. So if we do find the person that's willing and seems like a good fit, and we can give them more responsibilities as our budget discussions progresses in the next couple of months, I think that would be ideal. So that's my thoughts.
Thanks, Tanya. I agree. I want to let Nathan chime in. Nathan?
Thank you. Yep. So Tanya kind of covered what I was going to say. I guess from a kind of parliamentary question, does Kate have a position description then that would have to be adjusted to accommodate, the offloading of certain duties that would move on to a new position description? And then before answering that, my other comment is I think it depends how you position this. I like Tanya's point of creating the bandwidth to have more. We don't have to use it, but it'd be a convenient way to do that. I've worked in small businesses and had bookkeepers, accountants who often have cobbled together multiple clients. So I'm cautiously hopeful, even if it's not a ton of hours or a ton of pay, that we keep our fingers crossed. Maybe we find somebody. Thank you.
So I'll answer your question about my job description. I am using that, working with that the kitchen sink is in my job description. So all that would really change is that it would say more like supervisory, would add some of those clarifications to how, but I am evaluating that as I'm writing the job description and looking at what this individual could do. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you, Kate.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
So we just went from one job description to something that's multitudes bigger, just like that. And I want to go back to the first job description. Is the point or is the purpose of this, Kate, are you looking for a way to just get more work done with a little bit more bandwidth? Or are we hoping to have somebody who does bookkeeping and financials who really specializes in bookkeeping and financials?
No, I'm not. It's not about having it. And I think that that's part of the reason that we were having some trouble. First off, it was hard to find a bookkeeper. And you saw in my evaluation, we finally found an individual that might be interested, that will make aware of this opportunity. But the cost of an accountant is just unsettling, how much we've been paying.
No, our accountant.
So there was just no in between. And that was what we were trying to find, because we just need somebody, like Andrew said, the data entry. I need some of that administrative assistance. And it's really, I'm not trying to put it on y'all, but it is up to you and where you want things to go. And so that's why I said in my self-evaluation, you're paying for my brain. What do you want my brain to do? My brain, my skills are in project management development, not necessarily in QuickBooks. And so, but I love QuickBooks Online. I like where we've gotten things to, because now we have QuickBooks Online where I can pull everything I need, the reports I like, and Rita can just dial in and see what she wants too. And so that has been good. And so I think I'm open based on what you all want to see happen. And John has a comment and I wanted to let him chime in.
I just wanted to tell you guys about a program. It's the AmeriCorps Vista program, and it's an intern program, and Downtown Colorado Inc. runs it. But an option would be that you might be able to hire an intern that has a graduate degree or economic development degree or whatever it is, that could come and work for the town or for the DDA for 2 years. And you'd probably spend similar to the amount of money that you're talking about now. I'm not sure how the program fits your needs, but I just wanted to say it might be an option to look at how you could provide some administrative support and build some capacity without, before you know exactly what that role looks like.
Because a lot of the stuff that we would like for this person to do, I don't know if we're going to get to over the course of the next year. I mean, who knows? We could. And like Tanya said, we should always put or in, because then we don't have to go back and ask. But are they going to be doing a lot of social media stuff and things like this? And the hope would be that they would assist with that at some point and we would get to that. But what we're going to do now, I'm just not sure yet. And that lends to the Vista program a lot, where a lot of what we already know, they would be, happy to do for us. But we can look into that more if you all are interested in that.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's good to know that that's out there. It sounds like it'd be an ideal situation if we could find an intern that was experienced in that. And to your point, Scott, yeah, we did quickly expand, but I think my goal is that as the DDA can be more functional and accomplish more and bigger projects, as well as public outreach, business outreach, and that there will be a need for that additional time. That's my hope. That would be my intention. So, is there any other comments or thoughts from any other board members before we move on to the budget on this particular item? Okay. Well, I think yeah.
I had a real quick one, Andrew, if I could.
Yes.
This experience was in a different state, and so I can't name the program, but I know that there are placement agencies that do a lot of administrative stuff. I mean, hiring someone could be great, but if it's routine duties, you could do that. What I was going to mention is there was a retirement placement service that I had in Michigan. There could be something in Colorado as well that actually we didn't have to pay for at all. And we had someone coming in and doing exactly what you're talking about. They worked under our finance director, but they did data entry and some other um, it was more than just secretarial, but it had value add. But I think it's worth looking to see if there are some agencies that could help fill that gap. Should we go this direction?
Great, thanks, Nathan. Well, we want to move on to the 2025 budget.
So this is the budget. This is our ad. This is all of our administrative expense. And this is the form. This is Rita's form. This is starting with this way. So it's pretty fun. So I already put and we had specific interest at and the proceeds from debt. I actually need Oh, because I don't have the microphone on. I'm so sorry. Does let me go back then through. If you all couldn't hear me, I'll start over again. So
Also, Kate, sorry, sorry. What document is this? Is it in our packet?
yes, it is in your packet.
What is the name of?
This is the 2025 budget draft.
Page
And so it's a
9, correct?
PDF.
Is it page 9 in the pack, I think?
Let me slip because I'm in Excel, so that's
Okay. I think it's page 9, Steve.
yeah, it's
Okay.
right in the beginning there.
Okay.
But you don't have the completed numbers in there yet because I like to do that with you all in here so that it's part of the process in our discussion since we do typically do this quickly.
Okay.
All right. So I apologize. Now I have the mic on. Property taxes, we keep flat at 30. Specific ownership taxes, we're keeping flat at 1,600. Interest at 4,700. And then I had a number in here, but proceeds from debt, this column will be filled out after we determine how much we're using in the capital improvement tab. Transfers, salaries right now, and this is just for me and taxes, and that is 32.5. And then employer taxes is 3,200. Legal, we budgeted 10,000 last year. I think we could come down to 5 if you all are interested, but we can keep it flat. I just thought I would bring that up because we did put a lot of money in there and we are definitely spending legal this year, but I don't know that we're going to get to that 10,000 cap. So do we want to go around and talk about lowering it, or how do you want to handle that?
Well, real quick, I think So is it still Paul Benedetti still intending to retire or move on or?
No, he's going to send us a letter if things change, but no, he's still our attorney.
Okay, because I thought for a minute he said he was
Yeah.
wanting to get out. Yeah.
That was a different conversation. That it hasn't been. He told me when I followed up to find out more about that he was still our attorney, and that when that changed, he would definitely send us all a letter and give us time to make next steps.
Okay, well then, yeah, I think keeping the legal the same. I think there were, I think I've had very limited experience with Paul. However, I did share some of the documents that he helped with when we were dealing with summer concert series and some other matters with when I thought we were trying to find a different attorney because Paul was retiring. And, you know, I think if some of the feedback was, I just get the sense that Paul's, you know, maybe not necessarily, you know, super, this isn't like a priority. And I'm not a lawyer and I don't necessarily evaluate the contract reviews or the advice that he gives, but you know, I've certainly gotten some feedback that, you know, wouldn't be in our, it wouldn't be a bad thing to kind of look at other counsel for the DDA. So, and that would be the only sense that I would say keep the, you know, the budget at 10,000. If we stick with, you know, I don't see a real need to lower it.
Okay, because the last year our conversation was more about parking, and we thought we were going to need a lot of legal opinion, just given all the different climate. So that was the only reason I brought that up. But if the board desires to keep it flat, we can do that. Is there anybody else that has burning feelings?
I think given his experience, his work with the DDA in the past, if he's willing to continue working with us, let's keep him.
As far as the number goes, let's just keep it. We don't have to spend it, but it's not that much money and we're used to it.
Okay. I don't know if wireless dropped me. Goodness. Okay. Sorry, let me get it back up there for everybody. Okay. So we can get it. Okay. All righty. Where is it down there? So IT, I have 300. For IT, I have 350, which is where we've kept things. We don't typically have big IT costs, but we are part of town system, so we do kick in for anything. And if things came up, that's where that money would come from. For accounting, keeping it flat at 800.
Okay, can I just jump in with
Uh-huh.
website?
Go ahead.
Given we need website updating, and do we want to budget some money for?
So you have a separate resolution
Okay.
for the web work, and there's a good amount of money in there. And so we kind of talk about that when we get to the CIP tab, because we could absolutely put it in here since we just want regular work on that. But there is already money budgeted that we're working through that applies to the web work right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Next we have phone, and that's 207, and that's flat as well. Office supplies at 200. Postage and shipping 100. Boulder County tax collection, we typically spend about $500 a year on that. Bank fees is 50. Advertising, we have $500 in the account, again, to utilize more on our marketing initiatives and things, because we don't typically spend too much in that category, because your projects, when we do advertising or things, it comes out of your project accounts. So printing and copying, 100. And then conference and training, $1,000 for training for me based on the evaluation feedback. And then our DCI membership due, which is $450 a year. And so that's their category. And then this infrastructure improvements, again, that goes to our CIP tab, and you'll see that note there. So we'll do that. You'll see that completed next month when we go through this again. TIF taxes, we get about 350,000, 1,800 in interest. Boulder County tax collection, 5,500. And then again, these two numbers here tie into our CIP numbers. And so, Rita, if you're still with us, if you want to chime in now, you can certainly do that.
Well, hi, everybody. So really, property taxes and TIF, and the specific ownership taxes, those all, we will know more by the end of August. That's when we receive, the tax assessment or the draft of it. So, you may, Kate, by then, I think revenue, for TIF might be a little higher, but, it's definitely, a good way to start out since we don't know. That's what I'm going to do, is keep it the same until we receive those documents, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, because they don't typically come late August. And so that's why it comes in later in the budget process, those final numbers, because we get this money from this letter from the assessor that tells us what to project. And that's what Rita was discussing.
Right. And then also, obviously, if you increase salaries, there's a calculation that you're going to do for your employer's taxes. Those will go up. I really can't think of anything else right now, but yeah, I mean, your biggest thing is going to be your projects, really. So yeah, no other comments.
Thanks, Rita.
Could I ask about the website spend you were talking about earlier? To Andrew's point, so there's money that's already budgeted to do that, and you said that money is sitting elsewhere.
It's attached to a resolution. It's technically a project, so that's why it's not in this admin category, because it was approved as a project for this board in that capital improvement 1 year.
Okay, so that's why it shows up somewhere else.
Exactly.
What kind of money are we talking about, roughly?
So what?
Not to drag us down that conversation.
No, okay, hold on 1 second.
Like just roughly.
Oh, here it is.
I'm showing 3,000,
I was
Kate.
just gonna say 3,000.
But I don't know.
It was down farther.
How much of that is left over? Do you know?
That is what's left over. So we just paid a little bit of that, and I can pull up.
That, just wanted to get a sense for the magnitude. Sorry.
No. Let's see. Let me go.
Looks like, yeah, you spent 373.
Yep, 372.
So far.
372.
That's what this shows.
Yep.
Yeah. But Kate, I thought you had spent money in this in prior years as well. So that's what I was.
The original resolution is for over $5,000. So what you're seeing is what we've been carrying forward. So that number was what we carried forward from last year. And that's what we've been working off of. And that 300 some odd is what we've expended this year on that. So that back here. So that is the rundown of this piece, which is kind of your admin portion. And then, so if does anybody want to talk anything else there, or not, we can move on to the project piece or whatever you're thinking, Andrew and Steve.
This is Tanya. I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time viewing it on my computer. I can't get the whole picture. I know you're saying we're about to talk about projects, but was the summer concert series on here? I didn't see it.
This is admin.
Yeah, this is like.
Well, what page is this then? I'm looking at a different page then.
Well, Tanya, if I could maybe kind of, I think the way that I'm looking at this right now is that, part of the agenda item that we're talking about in the budget, there's several questions before the board. Some of them are, does the board wish to include any items from the DCI management report?
right?
And I
Which
think
we discussed it.
a lot of the recommendations of the DCI management report were things like, business outreach, additional, hours for, um, potentially a new job description. We've got, there's, as far as, not to kind of go down a sidetrack here, but, improve administrative capacity by focusing on management and leadership of the organization. So we've got, I think, to come back to what we're talking about falls back into the budget. It interrelates, it relates to a lot of the different things, but from the standpoint of, some of the questions for the board, I think what we're talking about is, what are we funding that relates to the DCI management report? And, specifically, yeah. So, if that answers the question, Tanya, at least that's my sense of kind of where we're at right now.
Okay.
But Tanya, also we were looking at a 3-page document, I believe, from the packet. And the first page is all of the projects where you would see
Okay,
the,
but I had the same question you had on the agenda. Oh, you guys hear that? Oh,
We get echo now, yeah.
I just disconnected. What page are we looking at the agenda? So I can get the right page up. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm gonna disconnect and reconnect. Anybody hear me? I don't hear anybody.
I can hear you.
I can hear Tanya, and I just heard whoever confirmed.
Yeah, that's Rita. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
I
yes.
can now. It was quiet for about 3 or 4 minutes while somebody said they were signing off and back on, and it went quiet for me from there.
That was me, but
I apologize. I think I hit a button I didn't need to try to make the echo stop.
Oh, okay.
all good now. Great, thanks.
Well, no echo, but the sound is back, so good. Thank you.
Hey, Kate, this is Rita. I have one more suggestion that I just realized. If you look at your interest account, 80, 75, 4,900, you guys have that budgeted at 1,800, right? And
Yes.
your revenue last year was 12 grand, and I looked at your financials just now, and you're at 6 grand already. So I would for sure up that one.
Oh, for the
I think that's-
sunflower. Yep.
I think that's safe to, I would probably do, I know interest rates are gonna change, maybe do 10 grand.
10
Just to
grand.
be
Okay.
safe. And enter
Thanks.
that as a negative
Oh,
on
yep,
your
yep,
spreadsheet.
Yep. And it's giving me a weird auto sum. So I don't know if I should, if that helps. Or hurts it.
Whatever works for you, I'll take those numbers from you at some point anyway, so I wouldn't worry
Yeah,
about
well,
this.
Scott's
Yeah.
asking here in person. So that's what I'm trying to see if I can give him something right now. Yeah, so it's giving me 280, 843 here. But there's a lot
yeah,
of factors that aren't playing into here still because we don't have the capital improvements. And go ahead, Rita.
Right,
You're
and
gonna say
remember,
something.
that is just, my document then has a summary page where it sums
Yes.
everything up that we were inputting here. You don't have that, so.
I was going to
um,
say that's not on this workbook.
Correct. You would have to just do revenue minus expenses on that spreadsheet for you guys, if that's what you're interested in finding out.
Okay.
So for reference, there's another page that shows what looks to be the entire budget
Well,
for
yes.
2024, and the admin piece is around 30,000. And I'm just curious, this page and a half that's on the screen, once we get all the income and all the revenue and all the expenses and it all totals out, if we're somewhere in that neighborhood, 30 to 35 to 40,000
For what?
for just a subtotal of what we're referring to as admin costs.
Yeah, the admin costs are typically between 30 and 40,000.
Thanks.
That's typically where it lands. And so
However, right now, the way you have it, if you do 32.5 with your salaries and 10 grand, you're over 40, but, and obviously if you're gonna
Are you
add
s-
an additional,
I'm sorry. So I think we're all talking about a lot of different documents. So I don't know what Scott's talking about because I'm looking at the 2025. So are you talking about where we are currently spending? Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure.
So the document I'm referring to is the one on the screen
Yep.
behind you. It's about a page and a half long.
Yeah.
And that is all the details of the admin portion of our
Mhm.
annual budget, or whether we're talking about 23 or 24 or 25. And we've got, for example, the adopted budget in the green. I'm kind of curious, that's where all the numbers reside. I'm just wanting to know, what is the subtotal of all those numbers for 2024 in the green column? Because that gives me a good sense for what we're thinking about doing in the 2025 budget.
I think we should be cautious on the subtotal of that because we got stuff going in both directions there.
Exactly. Like there.
It's netting out. Yes.
Yeah,
That's my expectation. It will net out. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, it will, but that's why. So this is what it does when I did that. It's 692, 247. But that is also including your infrastructure and other things. So that's why it's, because this number here, infrastructure payments in the green, that 1,024,000. So we don't have any of that in this yet because that feeds from the capital and projects tab. That's why
Okay.
That's
I think what
I'm going
What
to just
I'm-
retract my question.
no, I mean, I'm trying to, but this is the town document. And so you have a lot of information because I wanted it all to be, and Steve and I talked about, we don't want to have to keep going back and forth. So I just want to make sure I'm tying to, if you're asking about what our costs are currently compared, or if you wanted to, it seemed like you were asking a couple of different questions in there. And I just wanted to make sure, but it looks like Steve has a response.
I have a thought. I
Can't wait
think
to-
what I'm hearing the question is, what are we spending for the admin portion of our budget costs? That's different than summing this sheet up. So I think what we should do is say that before we approve our budget, we want to be, because this is a good question. We want to be able to say, how much did we spend, budget and spend in 23, 24, and what are we planning to budget for 25? Not like a sum of a bunch of stuff. What is our budgeted operating expenditures for the year so that we can compare them and say, how does that compare? We're talking about adding some cost for additional salary, and that's going to flow over in so that we can say we went from here to here to here, and that we can all have a simple number and we agree on it. And it's then going to be combined with other stuff, but that we can parse that out and understand the true operations component of what we're doing and feel comfortable with it so we can agree and move forward. Is that what we're looking for?
That's the idea.
So that's the way that the spreadsheet used to read, and that's why we used a different thing. Is that your admin and your mill levy and your TIF were all broken out differently, and so that's it was going to be one way or the other. So I do think, yes, we will get you all of those things, but it's not digestible right now the way that you're asking, and that is the way, like with Steve Carreau, when we first did budget together, that is how and why he asked about the mill levy. It's because we used to do it that way, but then it just turned into a confusing mess because everybody was looking at different documents. So this year we're working off of this one, but we can give you all of that detail. It's just it's not digestible necessarily right now like that. All right, thank you all.
So how do we, I think, as far as the next, talking through the, the aim for the 2025 budget, I feel like we've kind of talked through the admin portion enough. Some of the questions before the board discussion items, what projects should we continue to fund based on the report? Should an update to our plan be funded this year or next? Should the performance space be funded in 2025? And then I think we talked through should the future admin position be funded as DDA secretary? So I think, I can just speak to, I think right now, a couple of these, the performance space. We had a meeting with Nathan and of JVA, as well as another JVA associate up there. I can't remember her name right now. Natalie, thank you. As well as Nikki and Kate and myself. And I think what's, clear is that JVA can certainly, do the cut and fill calculations, and there's a lot of information from various other plans that exist that I think for the next, meeting, we can bring back as an action item on the agenda. But I think what I see is that we should be budgeting for not just JVA, because they're, I think, looking at this more from the civil engineering side, and there should be some funds budgeted for like an architect and landscape architect, and potentially, I think if we really want to have a nice space, and it doesn't need to be something that's crazy, but that, to do it right, you really need a landscape architect, and a small amount of consulting from sound, someone who's familiar with the industry. So I think that, in standing there, I will admit that in the beginning, I was, very much not a fan of that location, just because it was always a lot of it, it seemed that, and much of it is in the floodplain. However, meeting there again with Nathan and hearing that, it could largely get almost level. And the stage and potential, restroom area can be built and exist outside of the floodplain. I think my hope and goal would be that the long-term strategy for that includes assuming that the propane tanks are going to be relocated, and maybe that's just parking or staging area, or something else, but that all becomes part of, the waterfront, where you've got Curcio, you've got a performance space, and you've gotten rid of the propane tank. So I think there should be a decent amount of funds set aside for JV to continue some of their work after they get feedback from us on, because I think that's where they're waiting on now. So I think it's up to us to get the documents and put together. Yeah.
We sent them some of the stuff. We're actually waiting for some advice from them about possible contractors and people that we could make outreach to. So just that have worked on other amphitheaters or other situations.
So, I think as far as performance-based funding, I'd say, my thought would be there seems to be some momentum there. I would like to have that be continued, and I would like there to be some funds set aside for architect and landscape architect in addition. And, I think going around, I'd like to just maybe go around the room with questions for the board. I don't know what other thoughts folks have on the performance space right now. Barb?
Since I've been on the performance space since I very first started on the DDA, I think it was 2019, and it has morphed so many times. And to my understanding, we still don't have like town permission to have the performance space be on Garcia Field where it should be. So we're talking about a much smaller space, which is to the side of where the sewer ponds are. So I think if we're going to bring anything forward, we have to have some hard numbers to bring to the DDA and say, here would be the next steps, and here's what JVA says we need to do. Because without that information, it's impossible to plug numbers into our budget. I'd really like to see us pursue Garcia Field because it is the most logical place to have a performance space in town. And I would like to not just drop that ball without having further communications with ProSab and town and Nikki and everybody else that's involved in that process on whether or not we could do that to move forward. Because I would really be like, if we didn't take that step and we just decided we're going to go for the much smaller space, it would just really be a bummer.
So again, we discussed this. It's more just throwing the money there so it's available. You don't have to use it. You have to get approval from yourselves to use it. And so we are working on getting some numbers from JVA about what these first steps could potentially cost. And that's part of where we're waiting on for JVA, because we all put the documents together and found some good information from the previous work. Because a lot of what JVA did for performance space was just go through all the documents, all the conversations that have been had, as well as come up with what's going on. And we found that the Franchetti work, Barb, that's really, it seems to answer a lot of the questions and respond to a lot of the things that we've been hearing from the community. So there is work in earnest to get good numbers, and I don't think we're asking for that to be final tonight. It's more, do you all want me to keep finding out more about what that would cost? Or do you want us to keep working on this? That's what I think the board needs to decide. Like, where do you want to put your energy with projects in 2025? Is the performance space making that happen something you're all on board with? That's really what, I'm hoping for our project discussion is, here's what we've been funding. Here's where we are. Do you want to keep funding beautification? Do you want to keep funding public art? What levels? Because some of those you upped last year, but you're not going to keep them up there, I don't think, because some of them were one kind of try things. So that's what I'm looking for tonight, is kind of talking about that and seeing where you want the energy to be. And
I just wanted to tell you guys, I recently did a project like this, very similar. in scope, and engineering kind of to a shovel-ready design was about $25,000. So one of the things I might recommend to you is, as we kind of are on looking at what the space looks like in the future, it's a good opportunity to look for grants, and there are some specific GOCO grants that might help here, or LWCF grants, which are from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And it would help to have an amount there that you could use for match potentially. And so I think regardless of where that space is, you could be a little agnostic in what that encompasses and still have like some money so that you could advance a design, like a design concept next year. And there are some firms that work locally that you could probably get a good deal from. One is called THK and Associates. There's another one called Space Inc. that does very similar work in this kind of mountain region that we're in. And so I'm just kind of suggesting it might be a good idea, just kind of what you were saying, Kate, just to have like, you know, even if it's just an earmark for if that project comes to fruition, you want to start doing some analysis, just to like be able to use that for leveraging those funds potentially.
And we would certainly go to other boards, but I think this board, if it chooses to go forward on the performance space, needs to vote on that location. And we all just need to, we're not all going to agree on it. We just know that. Not everybody in town agrees about everything. You know, that's just what it's going to be. But if you do want to move forward, you're going to need to commit to that and make your path, you know, and I think that that would be one of the steps too, because there is still some people that agree with the space. Steve?
Does anyone know, like, over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, how much money the DDA has already spent on this location between a couple? I know we recently did a kind of the study around the rain garden, and then we go back and there's the prior, was it Freschetti was the term?
So there has been a lot of money invested. I mean, and the GOCO grant. So it all kind of feeds together. So there's been a lot of investment in finding out the space, and Barb probably has more history than me, but a lot has been invested in. And right now with the GOCO grant, that is the spot that we've been selling. So if we GOCO for leveraging funds, that would be the way it would have to be. And if we change things, we would probably have to the GOCO grant. Again, and I don't know that anybody wants to do all of those things, but nothing is no, but there's lots of different decision trees that could happen at different points. Did that answer things? But so the electrical shed, we put the electrical shed over there, and I know that, you know, that you have comments about that as well with the performance space. So there has been multiple DDA investments in many different ways in setting up that site for the performance space.
Okay. I appreciate the perspective that, like, if we're going to set money aside, I think to this point in time, there's been throw some money at this and throw some money at that, and we're still sitting here and we aren't anywhere near the concept of a shovel-ready project that we can go and get grant money for. And I think some of that is, if we're going to go someplace, we need to know where we're going. And that, I think, is something that we really need to think about as we move forward on projects like this. It is just that I agree with setting money aside if we can strategically move in a direction where we say we can get some consensus from not just us, but the BOT, town staff, and that we can move in a direction of saying we're leveraging our funding, maybe leveraging that for some grant funding and getting something that's not just throwing money at keeping different ideas afloat, because I think that starts to be not the best use of funds.
Yeah, I just want to respond to Barb. You brought up, you know, the Curcio thing, and you know, in the beginning was very much still, and, you know, was that Curcio was the place to do this. And however, walking, you know, obviously there's the whole GOCO grant thing, which is Nikki has said, you know, it cannot have a performance space at Curcio without buying out the grant that costs. But walking it with Tanya a couple weeks ago, it's not actually that much smaller smaller of a space down there. When you're actually standing there and looking at it, and if it were, you know, in the ways that we laid it out and discussed with JVA, it's not that much smaller than Gercio Field itself. And I think, you know, even if there's not a performance space there, certainly making it a little more landscaped and vegetated than a dirt pit would be, you know, would help. But I agree that we all need to somehow figure out where we're going with this. Yeah. Is there anyone online that wants to comment on this?
Yeah, I do. Tanya. Yeah, thanks for saying that about Gercio. Unfortunately, we can't do a performance space there, but anybody can bring in a temporary stage like we've done in Chipeta Park for the summer concert series. I guess after next year, we're allowed to do that with the quote unquote grass that's growing there. So that's always an option for anybody who wants to do a festival. If NetFest wanted to, anybody, they could bring in a stage and porta potties and the whole 9 yards. I agree. There's a lot of value into making this space not a pile of dirt and landscaping it and irrigating it and having it be another possible usable space. We're just talking about initially a couple options of just a concrete slab where people bring in their own stages, or a simple stage and pavilion. And we've seen those designs from JVA. And the next step is to get a landscape architecture in and slope it the way would be ideal for a performance space, and have some funds available for a matching grant should one come available in the next year. If this time next year we're still in the same conversation and we're talking about putting more money into just planning, then I think at that point it's like, forget it. We've just been throwing money away. I have high hopes that if we get this architecturally designed, the sloping, the landscape architecture with the JVA plans for that we've already paid for the pavilions, we can then apply for a grant and get some real money, get this thing done. So that's where I stand. I'm fine for budgeting it and some extra in case we have to do a matching grant.
Is there any other comment on the performance space?
I haven't commented.
Yes.
So you and I, let me just back up. I don't mind going against the grain. So we've had a number of conversations in the last 6 to 12 months about what the point of the performance space is. And what we did this summer with the concert is we approved that people love events. Problem is, that's not what the DDA is here for, to provide amenities. We need to do things for the community, but we need to have some sense that it does something for the business community too. And so I think when you talk about where we're going with this, I think we got to think about more than just how do we get this built? What do we want to do with it, right? Do we want to just have free events? Do we want to have events that actually generate revenue? Who owns it? Who maintains it? What are we going to do with this thing? What else can we do with this space? Because I think just building an event space to have it built because it's been talked about for so long and to prove that we can do it, I have to say, I think the next step isn't to get more landscape architects on it and to put out the slope. I think the next step is to have a really rigorous conversation over what we want to do with it and how are we going to use it and who owns it, and who manages it, and all those questions. So I know that's not the most popular way to approach this right now, but it'd be irresponsible of me to not say it.
I mean, I think I'll just follow up on that. Thank you, Scott. I think that's good perspective. And I also think that this summer, if you look at the different events that are taking place in Nederland, there was on First Street for Netter Days, there was some live music that occurred there. There's been stuff in Chipeta Park. There was an event that had live music at the quote unquote performance as well. And all of those events are functioning with mobile stages that make it so that something can happen without a significant investment. And I still just have a big question mark and in this solution down there. In the park, I think, is out of the conversation because of the cost of buying out the grant. But it's like shoehorning something between a sewage treatment plant and a triangle of land that's like kind of an industrial wasteland. And I feel like when I think about some of the purpose of the DDA and things that we should be trying to do, there's maybe a little bit more, the term blight like comes up once in a while. And do we have the ability to focus our attention on some things like that maybe like less about improving something and more about removing some things or changing things that are dragging the surrounding area down, I guess would be my kind of question for us as we're thinking about what we're going to spend money on.
Would it be helpful? Would the board like to have like a little work session on site where we all just walk around? Because it really was very impactful for everyone to be on that site that day with JVA and be walking through and, like Andrew said, feeling the site, seeing what we were going to do. And so we can put a notice up and we can all meet there and JVA can come out and we can all talk through things if that's something that board members would like as part of this process. I'd be happy to set that up.
Nathan here, as a sort of newbie, not just to the board, but to Netherlands, that would certainly help me. Actually, my whole career has involved development of performance spaces and public presentation spaces. And, my own take, and I say this with some reservation because I need to bone up on it more. But I think the comments around what I call the software part of it rather than the hardware are well taken. It could well be that the lack of this kind of facility is kind of a choke point on possibilities. But I would really want some developed software. How is this going to be used before too much of an investment in the capital is made so that it matches the need. And generally speaking, something that is very flexible is probably going to win the day. So you can really have a wide variety of things that it's not overly specialized. So just to chime that in, thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
And
I
this
mean,
is Danielle.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Had a chance to comment. I think we should certainly budget to continue figuring out the performance space. As for the different locations we've been looking at, perhaps it would be ideal to start separating what we've put money into, and instead of forcing it to be the performance space, see what would be logical to do with that space. For instance, a little gazebo that could be usable. Over at the train cars, they have a small roofed area where people can play music, which is what the Net Public Art did for Netter Days, and utilize that space and take care of the blight of how it looks. If it might not be the end all for the performance space, we could still utilize the money we've put into figuring out how to make it look nicer. And if that ends up being two directions, I think that would be okay. Thank you.
I think a lot of this conversation kind of leads to one of my other questions for the board, which is updating our plan of development. Because a lot of the stuff you're talking about has already been talked about, and all of this, like, this performance space is not new. And it's been vetted and gone through many different iterations. And so I think that that's where having the plan of development updated, it can help us have some of those conversations too. And unfortunately, and this was going to be in kind of my executive director update, Cheney, who worked on the comprehensive plan, who offered to help us with our plan of development update that DCI recommended. She's been on sabbatical this summer, and we have a meeting next week, but we could make the performance-based part of the conversation. I mean, because she's been in all our plans, and John can jump in, you know, she can really help us flesh this out more, because a lot of these questions are part of old documents that we're saying and showing that we want to update, and we can have those conversations. But the performance space is one of the biggest things in your plan of development currently.
I just want to chime in on that. It's definitely called out in the new comprehensive plan, in the sub-area plan. And so that's going to be finalized by the BOT as we move through the fall, and hopefully we'll have an approval of that sometime either late this year or early next year. And I think that that's something I want to bring up, because I've heard you guys kind of talk about coordinating efforts and making sure we're collaborative in our approach with the town. And I can commit to making sure that we have some conversations about these goals that you guys have, and make sure the BOT is connected to them too, so you can have some dialogue around that, and maybe make sure that's connected in a way that makes sense for everyone. And I also wanted to say, you know, a stage or a performance space like that is one of the biggest economic development tools that a small town can have, because it's one of the tools that you can use to not only control a crowd that comes, but also to make sure that crowd comes. And the way you kind of do that and align it and program it really has a direct impact on how people stop and spend money in your community. And so I think that one of the things that can help with that kind of software piece that you mentioned, Kate, but you guys haven't really talked about a ton, is like maybe becoming a Main Street community, because that's like the other arm of what a DDA can do. Because the DDA is really thinking about the physical space and then how we're using it and promoting businesses. But a Main Street community really thinks about the vitality of those businesses and that programming effort. And they can really go into those roles a little bit more easily than your board could. And that could be something that you guys do, and you kind of wear both hats. But I just kind of wanted to suggest that might be a way that you tackle that problem.
Can I say something? So I agree with Scott. When I worked for the town is when they started talking about the performance space, when they removed the old sewer ponds down there. That was in 2012. We're at 2024, and we haven't even figured out the ground rules of who's going to take care of it, where it's going. I mean, I think by next year, we need to set a serious goal and be like, look, we're either pull the trigger or we're not. Because at that point, we're going to be 13 years in and we haven't even put a shovel in the ground. I mean, Scott brought up some great points about the basics of this. Who's going to manage it? Who's going to take care of it? That's a large facility. And I completely agree with him on that. Thank you.
So maybe in addition to a walk around working session, I would strongly recommend that we have a working session. And maybe we need to have it with the BOT as well, where we go through 10 or 15 questions. And Andrew, you and I have kind of talked about them in the past, where we really figure out what it is we want to do, who builds it, who manages it, who owns it, what's it used for, all that good stuff. So a working session, we don't even have to walk the property for that. We could do both sessions. So.
And ProSab and Nikki.
Well,
Sure.
Let's think about how we want to roll that out with everybody, because I agree, everybody should be a part of it, but your conversation you need to have yourselves before everybody. You know, you need to get information from experts and have them come and talk to you in that way, the same way that we all were out there with Nikki and everybody. And so I think, and then you kind of move from there, but at first, you all need to come out there and you all need to decide that that's where you want to do the performance space, if that's what you want, because that seems to still be a question from a couple of you. And so that's why I brought that up at the beginning, that's the first step, is you need to say, okay, we're going to go with these plans and this suggestion, and we may move forward with this. the different possibilities, we can work through all of those. And John and I'm going to commit to you, we can come to you all. That's why you have staff. It's my job to find those options for you, show you the best practice, and give you suggestions and give you things to start to work from. So we can come with those kinds of things for you all to mull on, and then you ask questions that you want in the next steps, but it doesn't have to be quite that grassroots. That's why you have staff.
The other thing,
you know,
the other thing that kind of goes along with that is you made a comment that it's taken a long time to get this project across the finish line. And I think the one thing that would help with that is aligning what the BOT is understanding about your plan of development with what you guys are thinking about it. We're talking about town-owned property here that is always going to be town-owned property. And so they have a direct interest in making sure that, you know, these projects align with the comp plan and all of these things, which I think they do because it's the work that you do. But I think the more that that work can align, the easier it will be to get projects like this or whatever else you'd like to accomplish across the finish line. And I think that's just a matter of prioritization. And I think having, you know, looking at the feasibility of a joint work session could go a long way to really kind of working through that.
I completely agree with that, but we aren't even to the start line, let alone the finish line, and we're 12 years in. I think that we need to come together and figure it out or not, one of the two, and stop throwing money at it.
Oh, hi, this is Tanya. One last comment. My assumption was, to Scott's question, is that it's a town-owned piece of land. It's going to be town leased out, similar to the Chipeta Park Pavilion or any of town assets. Was there any confusion about that? And I'm just confused that there was confusion about who owns it and who runs it.
Never been talked about. We're just talking about designing and building something expensive. That's all
Well,
we've done a year. And
yeah, well, I mean, I think it seems the town owns it, and the town would lease it out, rent it out to any prospective people who wanted to put on an event there, just like you would at the pavilion. I mean, I don't see any
That's
other
where-
option. Who else would own it?
well, that's where we could, right. The way that the conversation has moved forward in a lot of cases, but that's where we can come with some other models and give some best practices and give some feedback so that you all can make the decision and decide if that's how you really want to do it. Because there's a lot of things that are possible. So without opening too wide, you know, there's a lot possible. So we can just bring you some good case studies and some good information to help you all discern what the soft should be scheduled as.
You know, just thinking about something to keep in mind, like take a town like Dillon that has the Dillon Amphitheater.
Mhm.
Granted, I know we're not talking about that cost $10 million to build in 2018, and it itself wasn't designed to be a money-making amphitheater, but in its capacity is 3,600, which is much larger than Gercia would be or anywhere else in that. That being said, every single show, sold out show at Dillon brings $1 million in economic impact to the town. So, I mean, I think that's part of some of the maybe.
That's
We're
why
not
the
trying to
ADA is paid
copy-
for
co-
infrastructure.
Yeah, copycat Dillon, but that's the idea here is that we'd say, okay, figure out where the location is, what the partnership looks like, what the design is, and ultimately it aligns with the comprehensive plan. We know that this is what people want. It's part of town property, and there's going to be significant economic impact. I mean, I think that's kind of where I am viewing this whole process, but yeah.
Okay.
So that's anything. Yes. 5-minute break. All right. 5-minute break. Yeah. So thanks.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
we're gonna go back to order. I think, as as Steve mentioned, we could keep talking about the budget for a long time, but bringing it back next month, with some more, kind of concrete action items. And I think if people could look at the DCI recommendations between now and then, that would be helpful because there's some important recommendations that I think would help inform budget decisions. And I think giving some thought to infrastructure and, Scott, you talked about, why are we spending money on a performance space? And, wouldn't it seem that there's basic things that the town needs and can't get? So I think, some of the things that we should leave tonight thinking about are, and we've talked about, how can we partner with town to improve, level up infrastructure, be that a performance space or be that pavement, street, water, sewer. So I think those are the things to keep in mind between now and next month's meeting and especially, kind of think about the comprehensive plan and the DCI report. Is there any other comments about our budget discussion?
I just wanted to follow up and say that when I'm going to have regular office hours here on Wednesdays at the downstairs conference room from 12 to 2. And so and I'm going to send an email about this. I'd like us to spend this next month, now that we've had this conversation, this has been really helpful for me to help kind of see where we can do some next steps. I'd love it, if we can all take some time and check in individually so that we can talk through different things. People have varying history accounts of how all this has gone on and that. So I know there's a lot of questions about different things. So I'd like to spend time, meeting with each of you about the budget next month so that at the board meeting, like Andrew said, we can go through, and then if there needs to be one final work session between September and when the BOT needs it, then we'll get that scheduled, and that would really just be for you to run over everything for one last final time and make sure everybody was on the same page with us. But we can move it forward that way, and we've done that most years. Had an extra meeting just to make sure that we're all on the same page and give us enough time.
You said 10 to 2?
Yeah, or 12 to 2.
12 to 2, what days?
Wednesday, every Wednesday in the small conference room downstairs. And that's probably going to change, but for right now, that's what I'm doing.
Thanks.
And I just wanted to make one comment, Andrew, based on your comments about infrastructure, because your examples were all about like chipping in with town for paving and things. And really I just wanted to say that the real mission of the DDA is for private-public partnerships for infrastructure. So it's more about like improving buildings within the central business district and things. So I just want to say that, I mean, we do a lot of helping town with their own infrastructure, but the real thrust of it is to improve property values so that we'll get more money back in the future from TIF.
That's a really good point, Steve. This is Tanya. I also wanted to wonder if we're going to bring up the idea of offering grants to businesses for infrastructure, property upgrades within their own
Facade
property.
improvements? Is that facade improvement
Or,
program?
I mean, it could also be equipment, or it could be a broken pipe, or, doesn't necessarily be facade per se. We haven't even talked about it. So I don't even know how we're going to get into this. I don't know how we're going to do this budget because there's so much to talk about. But is that something that people have interest in seeing in the budget discussion?
Well, I think that's where updating the plan of development will help too, because if that's starting to rise up, that hasn't been a huge thing, but it is becoming more of a conversation. And so again, in September, I'm going to have an item about updating your plan of development with the cost and all the information from Cheney after I meet her. So yeah, it's hard. There's so many different questions and everything is happening at once within the budget timeline. Go ahead, John.
The other thing, DDA, one of the primary focuses of a DDA typically is to work on infrastructure projects that do improve property values. And a good example of that is sidewalks. You know, it's things that you had mentioned, blight. We don't have a URA, which is really concerned with blight. But what you want to do with the DDA is look at infrastructure within a given boundary that causes issues with vitality of that property. And so that is a task that you guys are fully empowered by state statute to do and to work on. And of course, there's a balance there because you have funds and they need to support creating a good, essentially a good business district, right? And you want that infrastructure that does that. And that's why things like central gathering spaces like parks or sidewalks or good lighting or good access to businesses are really important, and why facade improvement programs can be really effective. But there is a whole host of things that you can use TIF funding for that really promotes that kind of public partnership, that public-private partnership in a way that really promotes property values, essentially. So I just wanted to say that you have a pretty broad range of powers in that space.
I think on that topic, I had to go to an event in Longmont earlier this week, and it was pretty cool because when we had some of the DCI presentations, we got a lot of examples of things that happened in Longmont. And I happened to park and walk down a alley in Longmont that didn't feel like an alley. It was like a brick paver way, and there were the entries from the parking lots, and it was really cool to be able to see, like, from the presentation that we saw, this idea of like kind of leveling something up and saying like, well, they don't feel like alleys, they feel like pedestrian walkways. And it's that idea of a partnership where we're trying to get at something where you would look at it and say like, well, maybe we didn't just pave a parking lot, but maybe it's the like making it not feel just like a parking lot. And I think that was a really cool example. And for me this week, it was cool to like go and experience it in person and then say like, oh, that like example of a project really clicks when we're like talking about this and like how we could partner in a like really productive way.
Thanks, Steve. Any other final comments on budget discussion?
Andrew, I had read through that DCI report for the meeting here, and nothing like jumped out at me as far as the recommendations that would transfer into our budget. But did you have a few ideas that shut out? I'll reread it, but.
Yeah, I there's a couple. Let me get back to you after that, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm happy to meet with you and talk to you about that if you want to, because I've kind of gone through and honestly, through your conversations tonight, you really did incorporate a lot of what they were saying. You know, investing in the organization, investing in admin, and doing more community outreach, and that's going to kind of be trickle down from a lot of these other decisions, but a lot of the stuff is rooted in there. And the biggest thing that they suggested was updating our plan of development based on the comprehensive plan. And then that gives us our guiding document to move forward again in light of the new planning documents that exist for town, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I did note a bunch of those type of recommendations as far as the admin and
so
the outreach. It just didn't seem like,
project
type
exactly. There wasn't necessarily project one, and that's where I can see now that's where we're spending a lot of our time. And I think that Andrew's idea will come back next month with some more guided conversation around projects. Now that we've kind of gone through the other pieces of things, I think that will be really a fruitful conversation for all of us.
Any public, any public comment? Any public in the room on that? No. Okay. Just as far as the infrastructure ask, not directly related to that, one closing thought. There was the email, Kate, that came, wasn't it, from Lindsay Danforth? Yeah. Okay. Can we maybe did that out to the whole board? Okay.
It did go out to the whole board and everybody saw that. I've gotten some feedback from individuals, but if there is a desire to discuss that at the next meeting, we can absolutely get some more information on that to include as well, if that's the desire.
What was her request again?
Sewer stuff, things for businesses in the district.
To assist.
Hello, Rain.
Sorry, assist with funding for sewer repairs, infrastructure, grant, I can't remember, if it was grant matching or just, basically helping with the sewer and water on First Street,
So I think the
whole business district.
yeah,
Okay.
it was for everyone. Yes, we could look at grants. We could look at loan program. There's so many different things that could be possible for that. Go ahead, John.
Sorry. Department of Local Affairs Colorado has a program called Energy Impact Assistance Fund, and it's for mineral impacted communities that have had mining. And Nederland hasn't accessed a bunch of those funds, but if there was a water and sewer project you wanted to do, it would likely be prioritized by the state. It requires a 1-to-1 match, but you would get up to $1 million. So potentially, depending on how much money you wanted to put into a project like that, it would be significant enough to do something fairly significant in that space. So I just wanted to say that that's something the town could very easily partner on to bring a lot more dollars to the table for something like that.
Would town be able to partner on that as well?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Tanya. Do we have a diagnosis of what needs to be done on First Street?
It depends on, there's multiple things that could happen. That sewer pipe is going to get lined in some of the places where it's older, but I think some of the laterals and things like that are pretty old as well. And so that line is, I think, 22 feet deep. And so it makes digging very difficult because you have a very narrow trench and it's just challenging from a working on it perspective. So as we kind of progress over time, we're going to want to really be paying attention to those utilities and then, looking at those hydrants and making sure they're maintained and all those things, just so that if there is development, it's the capacity is there to serve that development.
But if we were looking for a grant, or if the NDDA put anything in their budget to assist with property owners' sewer issues, what exactly would that look like? Like, what is the problem, and how much would it cost for somebody like that? What kind of grant? I mean, like the letter written is pretty vague. There isn't a specific need. Is there a specific need currently that needs to be addressed that's urgent, that could come to the NDDA or that could be applied for a grant?
I think you'll see some of those buildings that exist, some of their service lines to themselves, and that's something that's always from the main line basically to the building that's owned by the building.
Right.
And so when you're talking about a hole like 22 feet deep that you have to get to that main or whatever, you could be talking about $60,000 to $100,000 worth of work potentially to replace that line. And I think that's where some of the fears are. And that's why over time, I think one of the things that I understand, I may be wrong, but the town has thought about maybe putting another line, a secondary line that's not quite so deep for access to some of these things. And that's a project that could be considered, but I think that's another kind of a JVA question. That's something that we could bring from the town perspective too, to look at
that seems way out of our scope. Like, it would have to be something the sewer and water comes up with a plan, brings it to the BOT, we apply for a grant, and then you all will come back to us for a matching grant or something.
I think that's probably the best way.
Because I just don't know if we should budget what we could budget for in our current budget, other than X amount for a potential matching grant. But I mean, should we do that? Like,
I think the thought was to kind of just have everyone thinking about this, Tanya, for tonight, and try and move through and close up the meeting. Not to cut you off, but it being 8 o'clock already. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways. With the DOLA grants and funding and matching, but it's to get everyone thinking about, the role of the DDA and being able to, yes, we want to increase property values and drive business to the district. And, these are, ways that I think fall into that at times have seemed like they were, oh, it's just public works, like that should just be public works. But to the extent that we can help, bring in some funds, Steve,
Yeah, I think like maybe one of the opportunities, without saying that we're going to address that specific concern in that email, maybe the timing of it's really good for us to say, like, we're in our budgeting process. are there some best practices that we could follow for setting aside money that could be used for like, we always talk about, oh, it'd be great to get some grant funding, but sometimes we need to have money set aside for matching funds. Is there like a best practice for us as we budget to like have that money so that we're nimble and able to like actually take advantage of some of that grant funding? And that's something I think we can maybe come back around at next month.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, can we move on? Yeah. Yeah, so we're gonna go to the info items, treasury report, on to Steve.
Nothing else to add. Thank you, Kate, for all of your assistance.
And I guess the chair report, which I'm gonna work on next month. I didn't have time this month to deal with the chair report, so I don't have anything to add.
And
Thanks.
I don't have very much to add, but you will see an email with me about, like I said, the regular schedule that I'm developing with time for private meetings. So like that I have the conference room downstairs, or I'll be at HubNet in a private space, and then times when I'm working out. So you'll see an email about that in the community outreach and that I'm working on coming out as well.
I will start providing you guys with a staff report in the packet. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions. I've been here about a month now, and I've been spending that time really working on building relationships and listening to people and making sure I understand where I need to be pointed. One of the things I do know is that improving the collaboration between the board and the DDA and the other boards and advisory committees and everything is a pretty big priority for the town. And I think the BOT is very interested in working with all of you and really thinking about things in a collaborative space. And I think that's one really great benefit of being new and only having been here a month, is I can say, you know, wouldn't it be cool if we did this thing or whatever? And like, whether it was thought about 10 years ago or not, I'm, you know, just bringing stuff up. So I want to do that. And I want to make sure that, you know, I'm supporting their goals and supporting your goals too. And I just want all of you to know I've got open door all the time and willing to listen. You don't have to pull punches with me. Just tell me what I need to know so that I can work on it. Cause that's what I want to do. And I want to make stuff happen and I want to get stuff done. And I think at the end of the day, as long as, you know, we can collaborate and have shared goals and visions, that kind of work just becomes easier and easier, you know, to make sure that we don't have too long waiting on these things. Cause I think a lot of these projects, we're not going to see them get cheaper. We're just going to see cost increases. So getting them done benefits everybody. Other than that, you know, I think what we've really been focusing on is there's a couple of big grants that I think also benefit the DDA. You know, getting some of these sidewalk projects that have been discussed for a long time done is something that's on our radar to get done by next summer. There's, you know, I really don't have a huge amount of updates to bring you, but if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks, Jonathan. The beautification report, Kate, do you want to?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add. And then, I don't know, Danielle, would you like to speak about that report?
I have nothing to add to it. Thanks, Kate, for putting that together. Does anybody have questions?
Danielle, this is Steve Carra. I'd just like to say, you know, thanks for all the great work, and it's really impressive to see the art coming up around town.
Beautiful. Thank you. And you're welcome.
Riverwalk, anything on the Riverwalk?
Yeah, I had a question on the Riverwalk. They're saying we're hoping to make progress in August so that work can be completed before winter, but I was wondering what work there is going on with the Riverwalk.
Go ahead.
We're basically the walkway from the covered bridge down to Chipeta Park, where it's not ADA accessible, is actually going to be widened so that it is ADA accessible. It'll be up to 7 feet wide in some areas, and it's having more of the crusher fine put in so that it doesn't wear away so easily when we do get the weather, so that it's accessible. And then the second part of that is the concrete patch from the bridge down to where it turns onto that. because it really can't be repaired with crusher fines at this point.
Yeah.
So that's the Riverwalk that we've been working on, is just maintenance from the bridge to Chipeta Park to make sure it is accessible to people.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the other side of the river that.
Yeah, nothing
But-
there, nothing
yeah.
there yet.
And the piece that may need to move to 2025 is the concrete work, but there's some question as to whether or not we can try to make that happen this year. So Nikki and we're all working on that.
Awesome. And one other question, I'm pretty sure you would have addressed it, but in putting in those crusher fines and building out that walkway, it seemed like there's 2 or 3 spots that perennially have a lot of runoff. And I've seen some sort of half-done, drainage issues.
They're gonna be fixing
Great.
drainage issues.
Yeah.
They're also requesting whether or not we have money for some additional benches and some other things in our Riverwalk budget, which
Yeah.
we can discuss at the budget meeting next month.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
I think we've kind of touched on the summer concert series indirectly, so not really have anything to add that's not in the packet. Summer flagging services, nothing really to add other than I've gotten positive feedback about the flaggers, so seem to keep traffic moving.
I've received a lot of positive feedback about them too, and they've been great to work with. So that's been really positive condition.
Yeah, I just had one thing to comment on the flagging. I think it was during the 150th weekend when I had to crisscross town because my boy was in a musical across town. And I was really impressed by having the flaggers out there as opposed to, a slightly larger town that would have either traffic circles or, traffic light, God forbid. And it was really nice. I just felt such a personal touch and kind of like welcoming of having people out there on the street that were watching what was happening and stopping traffic when it seemed appropriate. It was just like a very friendly way to manage traffic, and it made an impression on me.
Thanks, Steve. Nothing to report on wayfinding. Well, looks like we're any other business? Any other business?
If not, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Wait, could I ask you a question about beautification? I don't want to drag us out too long, but we made a decision early this summer to not put in trash cans that we all felt pretty strongly about because we were persuaded we're going to hire this staff for the summertime, and that's going to make the downtown more neat and tidy. Do we have a sense for whether or not that was a good decision? I mean, I know we hired the people, but do we feel like that was the right decision and we should be looking backward at it to figure out if that was right?
This is Danielle. I've seen staff out cleaning regularly in gardens that I've tended to and walk around often. I've noticed that I've not seen near as much garbage floating around. So I think the decision we had made has a positive effect, whether it's the same as having a garbage can or not. I think the garbage cans would be overflowing, whereas these guys are picking up what is there and making sure it looks nice. I think it was a good decision.
Yeah, I think I haven't noticed tons of trash. I still think we could use a couple extra garbage cans on First Street, but
That's infrastructure right there.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I've seen people picking up garbage, and I appreciate that. I have in my personal study in the wind eddy in my yard, I haven't noticed a significant reduction of waste. But I think that's part of, we live in a windy place and stuff goes to where it's always going to, and unfortunately I have one of those. But I have also noticed town staff walking up and down First Street picking up trash. So I appreciate the effort, but I do still I feel like and at this time of year in particular, there's two sides to the story. There's a receptacle, and then there's the bear proofness of it. And I think that town is currently experiencing some visits from bears. And I think that that's a really important thing to think about is like, whether it's, town's trash receptacles, whether it's residential or whether it's businesses in town, the importance of bear-proof trash receptacles.
We just had a program for residential trash cans to upgrade to bear-proof trash, and that's something that's going on right now. The other thing I just found out is CPW is going to be running a new round of bear-proof, like commercial trash can receptacles, and that's a really good program. We can get like $50,000 for new trash cans that we could upgrade. So that's something I'd love to talk to you guys about a little bit more and what that would look like. So I think there's no match too. So I think there's really no brainer on applying for it.
We would love to hear that conversation. Okay, I just wanted to ask, keep noticing. Thanks.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Kate, can you call the roll? Me too.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Carell,
Yes.
Everett Nelson,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Nathan Smallwood,
Yes, and thank you all.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Scott Papich.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all.
Well, I'm here too, but thank you.
And Trustee Corvallin.